Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another live stream. I am joined here by Tim NesSmith and Greg Williams of the USS KIDD Veterans Museum. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing?
Doing all right. How about you?
You're here.
Good, good.
We're here on time.
Yeah, it happens sometimes, right?
Sometimes. I had a lot of help this afternoon, though.
Gotcha. So, how are things at the museum? Anything happening?
Still no ship.
I'm on vacation.
Still no ship, but we have Lemoyne and Lanehart are doing some work on kind of the walkway that goes out to the ship. They have water blasted all the paint off, and they're in the process of putting a fresh coat of paint on like the railings and the gate and such. So they're I don't know, maybe 40-50% of the way done through that.
Is that just on the levee side?
Just on the levee side, yeah.
Side? Yeah.
And the paint for the levee side is being donated to us by Pittsburgh Paint Company now, who are no longer PPG.
You guys mentioned that name before.
Pittsburgh Paint?
I remember. Yeah, or am I thinking of somebody else?
Pittsburgh Paint
donated before.
Helm donated the previous paint,
Okay.
and I think Sherwin-Williams donated the paint for the whaleboats, right?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about the paint for the whaleboats.
Now, Pittsburgh Paint, when it was PPG back in 2014-15, they donated the paint, all the paint for the A7 Corsair. So we've had a long relationship with PPG/Pittsburgh Paint.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Tim, I know you were at Dulac last week checking on the whaleboats. How are things going with the whaleboats?
Looking good. First one, of course, was already finished, the captain's gig. We reported on that previously, but the crew boat, they went ahead and water blasted again to reveal any more weak spots. She was in worse shape than the captain's gig was, which we've always known. That boat has always deteriorated a little bit faster than the port side captain's gig for some reason. But Ty Chauvin and Stephen Berg at Dulac have just and really Ty is the one that's really hands-on with it right now, but they have really turned to on both of those boats, and I would say when they're done, when this one's done, they're going to be in better condition probably for any time that we've had them since the 1980s, and held probably all the way back to when they were in service with the Albany.
Do you guys know yet if you're going to put them back on the ship before the ship comes home, or is that still in flux?
Still in flux. That may be a last minute development if it does happen in Houma, but very minimum. They're coming back home to Baton Rouge if they don't get put on there, and then we'll work with somebody up here, probably McKinney, when they have the spare time, and get them back on board up here.
Excellent. Well, we've got a pretty interesting topic for everybody tonight, and Tim was good enough to prepare a slide presentation for this. And Tim, you give me the word, and I'll fire it up. And so we'll look at it. We'll start from this angle. You guys at the museum, and I'm sure other museums as well, you hear a lot of myths and stories about the ships that you are the stewards of. Let's start it off that way. What can you tell us about some of these things? And let me know when to fire up the slide presentation.
Well, for me, probably with the KIDD, I've said for a long time to the younger generations, the KIDD kind of the World War II era is fast developing into being as far removed from them seemingly as ancient Greece. Although with the Christopher Nolan movie out right now, maybe not, maybe kids more. But a lot of people, particularly, I'm surprised, folks our age, are just amazed that there's still KIDD crew members still alive. That's the disconnect. World War II wasn't that far away. There's still at least one, maybe three World War II crew members that I personally know that are still alive. I know one should be 103 now. I have not heard anything from the family about him passing. We had one last year that passed at 102 that I was a little more familiar with. And then there's two up in Michigan, I think it is. Sadly, one of them I thought had already passed. And in 2016, somebody sent us a link to a video that a news station had put together where they got two KIDD crew members together. They're at nursing homes in the same town, but on the opposite sides of town, didn't know each other were there. And one of the staff members was kind of filling in at the opposite nursing home and retirement center and saw a baseball cap, USS KIDD, DD661. He's like, "You were on the KIDD?" "Yeah." He's like, "I got a guy at my place that's on the KIDD." He's like, "What's his name?" It's like, I told him, and he's like, "Don't know." He's like, "I didn't know everybody on the ship." So he went back to his place. He's like, "Do you know this guy? He was on the KIDD." And he's like, "There were 330 people on there. I don't know everybody on that ship." And so at some point, somebody got the bright idea, let's load this guy up and bring him over to this place, and we'll have lunch, and we'll invite the TV cameras. And it was a nice little get together, and you could see them instantly click, "Hey, did you know this guy? Did you know that guy?" And they started just exchanging. And you remember that time, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And one of the guys, I said sadly earlier, one of the guys, his name's John Butler. I've known him for years. He used to come down regularly for the April 11th kamikaze attack. And I hadn't heard from him for a long time. And I'm like, well, John, I think John's probably gone at this point. And lo and behold, John's still around. So I have not heard anything in the past 10 years on him. So I'm hoping both of them are still going strong. Unfortunately, HIPAA with the nursing home gets in the way of me being able to. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate that.
HIPAA rules get in the way of me calling to the nursing home and going, "Hey, can I speak to John?" Because they're not going to acknowledge that John is there. So, and I don't know any of his surviving family. So, but I wish him well, and I hope they're both still good and still with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we were talking about this before we went on air. Some people may seem to forget that KIDD wasn't only in World War II. She served in other wars after that.
Right.
Korea and the Cold War.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you won't know the exact number, but ballpark guess, how many crew members are still alive from those points in KIDD service?
You're right. I don't even have a close approximation of a number, but I do know a lot of the Cold War guys are still around. Because if you think about it, she retired in 64. 64 was 60 years ago. And 62 years ago. And if they were 20, then they would be 82 right now. If they were 18 going on board, they were, I just messed up my math. Help, Greg. Damn, I hate math. 62 years ago, so 20, they'd be 82. So they'd be
like
80
78
if
somewhere, yeah.
So late 70s,
Nobody
early
checked my
80s,
math.
give or take.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. So the problem with the Cold War guys, honestly, has been they, and Greg, you worked with Bakuna. She had a Cold War career. You could maybe speak to this a little bit. For me, the KIDD guys and the destroyer guys that served during the Cold War years always seem to have almost an inferiority complex when it comes to, you get excited about they're there and they served on the ship, and they always go, "Oh, well, I wasn't doing anything like the guys in World War II. They were knife fights."
Submariners do not know the meaning of the term inferiority complex. I can tell you that.
Okay. Good to know.
What I will say though, and because this Bakuna spent a large portion of her time during the Cold War as a training boat, and KIDD kind of did too, But there is a difference in like the excitement level of somebody who was only on Bakuna for training versus somebody who was actually stationed on Bakuna during the Cold War and spent years on her. So we've had people who, yeah, that was my boat. I was on her for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever the length of the training period was. And then we get people who were actually stationed on her and did secret squirrel stuff on her. And those guys are always the more excited of the two to come back.
Okay.
Interesting.
But no Olympia vets.
No.
Just
Can't say. We've had people who've come and said, like, my grandfather came to America on Olympia, and they actually meant Olympic, but that's as close as we get.
It's funny you say it because as you were saying that, I'm thinking, I know in World War II, the operation to come home was Operation Magic Carpet. I do not know if it was the same in World War I, but instantly in my mind, was Olympia part of that operation in World War I?
No, unless you were the unknown soldier, no.
There you go. So,
and speaking of that, we've got a family member in the chat. I noticed
yes.
Daniel Lee.
I will bring her comment back up.
It's Daniel, not Danielle.
You're right. Yeah, it took me a second to see that too.
I've talked to him on the phone. That's how I know that. So,
oh, okay.
How you doing, Daniel?
Wonderful, wonderful.
So,
all right.
Yeah, it's we get all sorts of questions. My favorite was not really a question, but kind of we've talked. I think the title of this is something about myths. Isn't that right?
Our title is U-boats in the Gulf ... and the Mississippi.
Ah, okay. So yeah, myths. Yeah, my favorite.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. My favorite kid myth is a dude that lives somewhere here in Louisiana, and he, for years, and I think I've talked about this before on other streams, for years he would be coming by the museum and he'd be regaling the tour guides with the fact that his grandfather served on the Kidd in World War I. And oh wow, you're some of them who are just learning, they're like, oh, you need to talk to our ship superintendent. Hey, Tim, come over here. And then I get there and it's like, yeah, my grandpa served in World War I on the Kidd. And I'm like, no. And she didn't get built until started construction in 42. And he's like, my grandpa said he served on the Kidd in World War I. And I'm like, no, she didn't come around till 2. Maybe he said 2. He said World War I. And I mean, he would dig in and I'd just start putting information out. Okay, the guy, they're named after people who have died. And the guy that she was named after didn't die until Pearl Harbor. My grandpa said, and yeah, it would end up finally, you'd see the red line going up his face and everything, steam start coming out of his ears. And he would ask me if I'm calling his grandpa a liar. And I'm like, no, I think maybe you just misunderstood what grandpa said, kind of like telephone. It gets told enough times and something gets disconnected in there and then it goes sideways and then it's not the same story anymore. And he'd leave and he'd come back a year later, 6 months later, something like that. And the tour guides kind of know now, they've learned a little bit and they're like, no, she wasn't around in World War I. And eventually they'd call me and they're like, Tim, was there another kid before this kid? Nope, this is the first one. There's a guy down here that says his grandpa served in World War I on the Kidd. I'm like, yeah, I know him. Okay, I'll be down in a second. Because he wasn't leaving him alone. And here I come down the stairs and they're like, okay, here's our ship superintendent. And he turns around and he catches sight of me and he's like, you. And I'm like, yeah. Hey, how's it going? So he hasn't been around for a few years. I hope he's doing okay. I'm kind of getting worried about him. He hasn't made an appearance.
Well, the ship hasn't been around either, so.
That's true. Maybe he'll come back when the ship comes back.
Well, there's a difference between just telling a lie and being misinformed.
Right. And I don't think he was lying at all.
Right.
I think it may have been a situation where, and I even offered, I said, there was a USS Kidder, Kidder, which was an interwar ship, a destroyer. She came late 20s, early 30s, and they got rid of her by the time World War II came along. Just one of these old destroyers. She may have been a four stacker. I'd have to go back and look. But even then, she was not finished before World War I ended. So he wouldn't have served on the Kidder in World War I. I kind of feel like he was telling him, I served on a destroyer like the Kidd in World War I. So
Right.
he served on a destroyer. But
Kidder was a Clemson class.
she was a Clemson class. Okay, so a four-packer. Excellent.
We got a couple of comments I want to get to questions before we roll on. Reminds me of a guy I once talked to who was swearing to God that the attack on Pearl Harbor happened in 1942 simply because his grandpa told him so. Despite my best efforts, I could not convince him.
And it's not that Grandpa. Grandpa may. Depends on how old Grandpa was. Grandpa may have got his dates mixed up.
Yeah,
I'm not that old, and I
memory loss. Yeah. So this is going back to your guy who was convinced his grandpa served in World War I on the Kidd.
This guy is a museum person because he works or volunteers at North Carolina, which, by the way, you owe us some ice cream in another month, my friend, or at the end of this month. So pay up. Anna, is there a way to look up his grandfather and find out what ship he was on? He should be able to write to the National Archives and get that information, his grandpa's records. So, the projected date for the ship to return, spring 2027 is the best I can do.
That's the best we can do right now.
It's dependent upon the river, and the river's dependent upon the weather. So talk to your local weatherman. He probably has as much of a guess as we do.
Yeah.
Hope you guys are doing well. I've got my kid sitting proudly on display at the office.
I'm assuming that's related to Kobe.
Speaking of which, available now at the USS KIDD Veterans Museum gift shop. Oh, I just knocked a piece off of it. There you go.
You knocked a piece off.
Yep, it's okay. It's on the other side. That's why I'm not showing the other side.
Did you lose the piece, or can you weld it back in place?
Oh, no, I see it. It's right there. Now, there's a shelf. There's a big wide shelf down here at the bottom off camera that you guys don't see.
Because I have lost a piece, and I can't find it. So
okay.
I might have a volunteer who's mad at me.
All right next to my trusty rivet that also came out of the gift shop.
Rivets.
Yeah.
The rivets we do ship.
So yeah, since you mentioned that, you guys do ship the rivets, but not the Kobe models, correct?
Correct. Yeah. If you need the Kobe model shipped to you, you are better off ordering directly from Kobe. Just go on their website. It still helps us indirectly because Kobe sees how popular the kit is. It sticks around longer. They may work with us again in the future, so it helps us indirectly.
Was the USS Fletcher and the USS KIDD identical, Anna? Yes. USS Fletcher was the lead ship of the class.
And the model kits, depending on which company you have, but most of the time, if it's a Fletcher class model kit, they make it with enough decals and enough variable parts to where you can make it any of the 175 Fletchers. Except for the dual rudders. The four that don't have dual rudders, or that did have dual rudders, you probably won't be able to make that one. Those four.
Now, also worth pointing out, because I did this, I bought the trumpeter USS the Sullivan's model and converted that to KIDD. And essentially, by conversion, all I did was have custom made decals and put those on the ship to make it KIDD instead of Sullivan's because they're that much identical. The Tamiya kit has the original rounded Fletcher bridge, not the wedge-shaped wraparound bridge that the KIDD has. So if you have the Tamiya kit, it's not going to be 100% identical to the KIDD.
Which kits actually have the ability to do the square bridge and the round bridge? I know there used to be one. Was it the Revell?
I am not aware of one. I just only know of the two that I just mentioned.
I think Tamiya made a separate like upgrade sprue type kit that was the square bridge kit that you could make them therefore make that one kid. It may have even been kid specific, but I do know Tamiya did have it wasn't a whole model. It was you bought the one model that you bought the upgrade sprue and you could interchange the parts.
I know I've seen 3D printed bridges that look like Kids or the Sullivans, the later ones, and you could essentially just put that one on instead. But you do have to look online to find that piece.
Yeah, Iron Bottom Sound. There's a website called Iron Bottom Sound. I think that does a lot of like that 3D print model kit upgrade stuff.
Okay. So
James, if you can find the Tamiya, is that the proper pronunciation?
That's how I pronounce it. I've heard Tamiya.
Okay. Well, if you can find that company's Kidd class destroyer, you need to build you a 993 as well, so you'll add to your fleet.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
I have seen the 993.
It looked like a pretty good model when I saw it.
There is also a company that makes an Arleigh Burke.
There you go.
Raise your hand, everyone, if you have ever been on an Arleigh Burke class destroyer.
Why must you vex me so? Going back to the chat for a moment, Carpenter is volunteer for 29 years on the showboat, and he understands the debt that the showboat owes Kidd for friendly fire. So yeah, he's going to send us a sheet cake. Greg, what flavor you want?
Oh, I don't discriminate. Either's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, cake is cake to me.
Okay, sounds good.
I know we got a little sidetracked with all that, but still,
Okay.
The U-boats in the Gulf and U-boats in the Mississippi. Lead us off, Tim. How do you want to tackle this topic?
Well, this was a topic I knew only a tiny bit about when I first started at the Kidd, but I was very fortunate enough to make the acquaintance of a local historian, local right there in your hometown of Houma, by the name of C.J. Christ. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I don't think it was Christ. I think it was just Christ.
It was Christ, and
Christ.
I knew of Mr. Christ. I did not know him personally.
Well, I'm not going to pretend that we were close, super tight buds. I probably got to meet him 4, maybe 5 times and talk with him. And just a wealth of information. He's one of these historians who he didn't focus over a broad area. I don't feel like he focused on something that really interested him, which was the war in the Gulf of Mexico during World War II with the U-boats and everything that grew out of that. And he really, really focused in tightly. He published a book, what's the newspaper there in town? The Courier?
It was. I do not know if that's still a thing or not.
Oh, really? Okay. That's kind of sad. Okay.
I know there's a local paper. I don't know if it's published every day anymore.
Let's see. Is it the Courier? I got Cliff Notes, folks. Yes, the Houma Courier. So he had a news column in the Courier for many, many years, and I think it was once a week, he would put out this column, and he talked about local World War II history, specifically relating to the war in the Gulf. And the way I came to know him was I stumbled in my research onto his book, and it's getting all sorts of.
Oh yeah, World War II in the Gulf of Mexico.
In the Gulf of Mexico by C.J. Christ. And I stumbled across this on Amazon and ordered it and couldn't put it down. I read it straight through, I think, in about 3 days. Wow. And It's just the collection of his articles up to a certain point. He did a second book that came out later. I found out too late in the game, and it was a limited printing, and they had sold out of all the prints. So I'm still in the hunt all over the web looking for his second book to have the complete collection of his articles from the Courier. But one day I was on the ship, and I saw this guy walking around, and he wasn't walking around like the typical tourist. He was taking photographs. It looked like he knew what he was doing. So it's like, wait, is this guy one of the crew members or somebody like that? Somebody served on a Fletcher. And the more I looked at him, the more I was like, wait a minute, I know this guy. Where do I know this guy from? And eventually it clicked, and I got somebody to watch Quarterdeck for me, and I walked over and I was like, excuse me, are you CJ Christ? And he kind of was like, yeah. I'm like, I just read your book. I went fanboy on him, right? I was like, oh my God, this is an honor to meet you. And to his credit, such a nice guy. He sat there with me probably an hour and a half, and I was sloughing off for an hour and a half, but I call it research. And I just picked his brain and was asking him all sorts of questions. And we would talk on the phone every once in a blue moon after that. Whenever he came up, he would ask for me when he came to the museum, and we'd visit. 2016, January, I want to say 2016, we went. I got asked to escort a bunch of World War II ladies, military ladies, veterans, down to the Regional Military Museum in Homa to take a tour. And some of them were up in age, and so basically I was just there to have a strong arm for them to hold on to and help them get around, make sure they stayed hydrated. And CJ actually showed up because he was the founding force behind that museum. Yeah. And if you've been following our channel, we've talked about the fact that their LCVP, their landing craft, Higgins boat, it's Vietnam era one, has been under restoration at Duloc shipyards right in queue, right in front of our boats. And so at that point in time in 16, it was in the water and operable. And so he took all the little old ladies on a ride through all the canals all around Homa and the LCVP. And the one questionable thing he's ever done, he called me to the back of the boat, and he said, I want to go talk to that lady up there, take the wheel. And then he walks off, and I'm like, So I actually drove a Higgins boat. And I say that's questionable because insurance on repairing a Vietnam era Higgins boat is not cheap, I'm sure. So, but I didn't hit anything, so I was pretty good.
And you didn't sink, so.
I didn't sink it. I didn't put the old ladies in the water. It was a good trip. So, and then we went to Abears. So that's where, when we got to Homa for dry dock, it was like, wait a minute, I've been here before. So
right.
The landing craft, if I understand correctly, the LCVPs were all built here in Louisiana. I think,
in New Orleans, more specifically.
Yeah, I think actually they had a yard right there near Thomasy as well. Higgins did. I found that out. It's right at the intersection of Industrial Boulevard, which is where Thomasy sits off of, and LA 661, which Parks absolutely loves that. But right there by that drawbridge and that little canal behind it.
So if 661 road sign goes missing from the east side of Homa, should we look somewhere in Baton Rouge?
No, because I told him not to steal one. I said
he's had them replicated already.
That's something you want on your record. There's a hefty fine. We got him hooked up with somebody who made a replica of one. So,
Anna says U-boats in the Gulf, such a rabbit hole to go down. Yes, very much so.
Yes.
Also, real quickly, I mentioned this a few weeks ago because I talked about U-166 and the SS Robert E. Lee, which I'm sure is going to come up in here at some point. And I was referencing an article that interviewed Mr. Christ, and I did mention then, and I'll mention again. Sadly, Mr. Christ passed away this year in May.
Was it May? I couldn't remember if it was May, June, something like that. But yeah. But a great historian, great writer. His columns. There's Greg and I have talked about this before. Some history books, and particularly when we're talking with Elijah when he's doing our Patreon's book club. Some historians, man, reading through their stuff is like swimming through concrete. It just does not. It's not easy. CJ's really. I think the reason I blew through it, one, was because it was a topic right here at home that I had never heard about before. And two, he wrote in a way, I'm still talking about him in the present tense, he wrote in a way that was accessible. He didn't use these big flowery phrases and words. If he did, he took a moment, took an aside, and explained in more common language what this term means and everything. So very accessible to the everyday reader. And that's really a great talent to have when you're a historian and trying to write as well. So all of that to say, most of what I've learned on this topic, I learned because of CJ and then reading his book. And then, of course, I want to know more. So then I go out and I dig on the internet and got a little bit more. And 9 times out of 10, when I dug, I really didn't find much more because CJ just researched the whole thing to death and talked about it. So.
Right. It was clearly something he was very passionate about.
Yes. So yeah, this is probably one of my most favorite topics in World War II history. So yeah, there's a lot of people when we put this post up talking about we were going to be doing this live stream. There's a lot of people that didn't even know that the Germans were in the Gulf off the coast of Louisiana and Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Texas.
There's very few people who know the German U-boats actually got close to American shores in general.
True.
Yeah.
And Greg, since you're the resident submarine expert, please jump in on any of this where applicable, because I'm regurgitating what I learned from CJ. You can really expand upon it with your submarine.
I will do my best. I'm primarily a fleet boat guy, so I'm not quite as versed in U-boats, but I will do my best.
Okay. Well, I mean, the physics for a U-boat should be similar to the physics.
It is. I'd get asked on tours all the time, what's the better submarine, fleet boat or the U-boat? And my response is it's comparing apples and oranges. They're both fruit, but they were both built for different purposes.
Okay.
Different missions, if you will.
So that's an interesting question. What is the difference between one of our fleet boats and their U-boats?
So from the way I've always understood it is that American fleet boats were purpose-built with the expectation that they would have to cross the Pacific. That is a very long journey. That is a very difficult journey that you're not going to have a whole lot of opportunities to replenish, resupply, rearm, and so you have to take everything with you. That's why fleet boats are so much larger than U-boats. German U-boats, by contrast, were largely built to operate in the English Channel and around the European coastline, and so they're not having to travel nearly as far as American fleet boats are. That's why when you do see U-boats come across the Atlantic to the U.S., there's generally like a milk cow U-boat, the fuel refueler right, that comes across with them. And so they were built with two different missions in mind. Both excelled at their respective mission. Would I pick a U-boat to go from San Francisco to Japan? Probably not. Would I pick a fleet boat to travel the niche little inlets and bays of the Mediterranean coast? Also, probably not.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, James.
Just a quick question concerning how comparable the two are, because I've got another question I'm going to ask later. In terms of propulsion on the surface and below the surface, how close were they? You know, the fleet boats and the U-boats. Like
they're comparable. They're both diesel electric. So diesel on the surface, electric drive under the water, battery power under the water. So
okay.
in that way, they're similar.
They're very similar. Okay.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Wasn't there a German U-boat that actually went around to Tokyo and was surrendered somewhere in the Pacific Theater? Or am I confusing the I-boat that went around to Europe and then came back?
No, there were a couple of German U-boats in the Indian Ocean and in the Southeast Pacific. They kind of went through the Mediterranean, then through the Suez Canal, and kind of the long way around.
Okay.
I don't remember which ones specifically, or I don't even remember how many there actually were, but I know there was a German U-boat presence in the Southeast Pacific during the war.
Okay, but they made multiple stops on the way.
Yeah, they went the long way, basically.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and launch into it, James.
Okay. So let's pull up our first slide.
So one of the big things was to start out is just starting at the beginning, Operation Drumbeat, starting in January 42. Germany has been holding off going into U.S. waters, but once the declarations of war started in December of 41 after Pearl Harbor, then gloves are off. Here comes the U-boats, and Admiral Donitz. Anybody?
Donitz?
Is it Donitz? Donitz?
I've always said Donitz.
Donitz.
But
okay.
I don't speak German, so.
I don't either. And if anybody watches this video, please forgive me. I'm just going to say Donitz. He takes off the gloves and sends them over into U.S. waters. And if you've even just got an inkling of an idea of what this topic is about, you know we were not prepared. Ship sinkings were taking place on the East Coast. There were no blackouts, so the subs just basically sat back offshore a little ways and scanned, and here comes the silhouette of a ship, and then they line it up and they take their shots, and now all of a sudden you got flaming ships off of the coast. There was no convoy system in place, which one of the Brits called out the U.S. for, and the U.S. Admiral, I think it was maybe King, you'd have to correct me, Greg, if you know, made the comment that you're just bringing all your targets into one location by setting up a convoy system, but ultimately he was proven wrong. No escort system in place of like you saw in Greyhound, where you've got escorts going out a certain distance with the ships and then handing off to another group of ships and then handing off. So we were caught with our pants down. And we can move over to the next slide. So CJ really lined this up well with the way he did his columns. Now, his columns were not always linear. He'd bounce around throughout the whole telling. He'd talk about air. He'd talk about Navy. He'd talk about civil Air Corps, civil Air Patrol, that sort of stuff. He'd, whatever the interest was, just to keep people from tuning out from the column, which is a good way to write it if you're writing for a newspaper. But Admiral King and his staff were slow to respond to the sinkings. So ironically, Hap Arnold, in charge of the Army Air Corps, backed the creation of the Civil Air Patrol. And the Civil Air Patrol is simply a bunch of dudes who know how to fly little civilian planes. They have no weapons whatsoever, but they're going out and they're patrolling offshore, and they have a radio. And when they sight a U-boat, or they sight a shipwreck, or they sight lifeboats in the water, life rafts in the water, then they radio in. And then naval escorts and Coast Guard vessels can go out and either run down the submarine or do rescue duties with the survivors. And I love this quote after the war. It's from Neprin's Flying Minutemen. after the war, one of Hitler's high-ranking naval officers is asked why the Nazi U-boats had been withdrawn from coastal waters in early 43, and the answer was a very curt, "It's because of those damned little yellow and red planes." And that's the colors that the Civil Air Patrol, painted their planes so they would be recognized. And some of these Civil Air Patrol guys were actually making dives. There's a great painting showing this little, I don't know, aircraft, civilian aircraft, but it looks like to me like just a mono wing on the top, and then the body of the plane underneath with the little tripod wheels, like a Cessna or something. And he's diving down on a U-boat in the water, trying to force it under, to enable a ship to get away. And they're shooting back at him and everything, but he has no weapons. He's raw dogging it right down, to the deck to scare them off. And that's kind of the first response to the U-boat threat, was the Civil Air Patrol.
Off topic real quick. I do know the answer to this. And is asking if do you know if Mr. Chris's columns are online by any chance?
I think some of them are, but I want to say I looked one up earlier this week when I was putting all this together, but I think they're behind a paywall.
Okay.
And not something for his museum, but something for whoever, the paper company was.
Gotcha.
So Civil Air Patrol gets formed, but before all that happened, and before the U-boats, were unleashed, the Navy actually started building a naval base at Burwood, which is all the way down in the very tip of the Delta, right before head of passes, where the river splits into that bird's foot with the three passes: the southwest, the south, and
so basically Venice.
It's on the opposite shore from Venice, and I'd have to look at a map because there's not really anything at Burwood anymore. Got so the whole thing just sank into the silt over the past 80 years. Whatever was left after they tore all the stuff down for materials. But they set up this sector base, and they put some heavy artillery on either side of the river. You can see the water tower here in this picture, and there's not many pictures of the Burwood Naval Section Base at all that give you an overview. So on top of that, you can barely make it out. You see the top of the water tower. Can you put your arrow back there, James? At the top of the tower. So just right there. Wait, go down. Right there. That little black line, that little black disc. They put another platform up there, and that's the watchtower on top of the water tower. So that's 195 feet up in the air. And I had never been down there till we took the kid down and around, and man, it's flat. The land looks like it's an inch above the water. So 195 feet up gets you some visuals way out off of the Delta. So they can see what's going on. They also put up another tower over at the South Pass. And any ship coming up the river would get inspected as it passed the base. They had docks that were capable of supporting minesweepers and all sorts of patrol boats, and something as large as a destroyer. So this was once it got up and running, they didn't start construction until December. Once it got up and running full force, then it was able to send out patrol boats and rescue vessels to counter this U-boat menace that's going to enter the Gulf. Without that, it would have been a very different picture in the Gulf.
Right.
Let's go ahead and move on. There we go. I always found this ironic. The Navy is supposed to be the ones out doing anti-submarine patrols and everything, but in January through March, they were still just not getting it. And I see somebody commented King was an idiot. I don't know if he was an idiot or not. I hate to disparage somebody like that, but he didn't move very fast, or he couldn't move very fast. One of the two. Yeah, the Louisiana National Guard were flying Havoc bombers out of Shushan Airport on the lake there, and doing anti-submarine patrols with their bombers for the first 3 months of 1942. And then the Army Air Corps, even farther away up at Shreveport at Barksdale,
Wow.
They were flying their Liberators down to the Gulf and making patrols as well. So for 3 months, the Army Air Corps was picking up the slack and trying to put pressure on. But unfortunately, they didn't know that there weren't any U-boats there yet. So we'll move on to the next slide.
Real quick, what is the reasoning behind flying bombers from Shreveport all the way down there?
I would assume, I've never seen any documentation on it, but I would assume they've got machine guns on there so they can machine gun the boat if they get a shot. They've got bomb bays. Maybe they're able to drop depth charges.
But why not just station this stuff at New Orleans instead of stationing it at Shreveport and flying it all the way down? New Orleans is right there on the Gulf.
I don't know enough about the capabilities of the bombers or the fields at New Orleans, but it's a possibility maybe they didn't have runways long enough to handle the Liberators, perhaps. I'm just guessing here. I'm pulling stuff out of the air. I do not know the answer to that.
Yeah, I wouldn't know either, but that would be my best guess, is the capability of the bomber versus the capability of the airport.
Gotcha.
And I will say this: out of all the Army airfields in Louisiana during World War II, Barksdale was the only one that had bombers, like true bombers. Others had the little fighter bombers, and the rest of them were either navigation schools, like in Monroe, it's Selman Field, or training schools for fighters, like here in Baton Rouge at Harding Field. Hammond had an airfield, but it was kind of an auxiliary field in case the main group at Baton Rouge at Harding, if they developed air trouble, they could divert over to Hammond or one of the surrounding fields. Same thing for England Air Base in Alexandria. They were a fighter training base.
Okay, moving on. We've got looks like a destroyer, a four-stacker destroyer here.
Clemson class destroyer, if I remember correctly. The Navy in April of 42 gets it in gear, and they lay a minefield west of Key West, Florida, to try to close the Florida Straits to
U-boats,
incoming traffic into the Gulf. They laid 3,500 mines. They forgot to tell everybody about it. The Sturdivant actually sank just days after, I want to say it was 8 days after the minefield got laid, and went down, 30 killed in action, missing in action. The captain had never been briefed on the minefield's existence, just ran right into it. Okay. I didn't realize I said Monroe in a particular way, but okay. And here's the crazy thing. You would think the minute they lose one of their own ships in their minefield, word would go out. But no, as late as July, all through May, June, July, you've got civilian freighters that have not got the word of, okay, follow this course, and here's the path, and avoid this minefield. You had freighters just plowing right into the minefield and sinking. So loss of life, loss of vessels, loss of material being carried on the vessels. Again, the Navy didn't have their act together yet. It just didn't make sense. But I do love that picture of that mine. That's a Mark 6 mine. I didn't
Okay.
know much about mines. I kept looking at, there's some mines. Greg, you've been to Corpus Christi to Lexington or no?
No.
No. Okay. James, you have.
No, I've not
No.
been to Lexington.
Okay. They have some mines floating around the Lexington. It's kind of humorous.
Really?
It's like she's trapped there. But they've got one of them pulled up on shore. It looks vastly different from this one. So I'm used to the big old spiky ball, but apparently that was not American mines. This had little wire antennas sticking out from it, and if it brushed it, then the electromagnetic, change would set it off on them. And it was a moored type mine. They don't just, apparently the Americans did not just throw mines in the water, like we see with Iraq and Iran and everything in the Persian Gulf over the years. Right. Ours were always moored. So interesting stuff.
Here we go. Getting into the meat of it here now.
Yeah. So we've been patrolling in the air with the Army Air Corps. We've laid mines, but the Germans weren't there. The Germans got there first part of May. U-507 enters the Gulf, and then a whole ton of them, all the wolves were coming. The rest of the pack was coming in behind them, and that's 507 in the photograph that you can see the whole sub in the background of the photograph, and this will tie into what we're going to talk about in a little while with some of the myths. Sure. But there is an incident, and I talked to you about that. I would be talking about an ocean liner, the Laconia incident.
Yes.
Which takes place, I forget what year it was, but the ocean liner Laconia was torpedoed by U-507 after she left the Gulf. And she hit her, sank her, and then they surface after a little while when no escorts make an appearance, and they hear women and children's voices in the water, and they hear Italian voices, and they realize, oh my God, we sank a ship that has some of our allies on it, and they were Italian POWs, and a host of other individuals as well.
Right.
So the captain of the sub broke radio silence and radioed some of the other wolf pack vessels in the area to zero in. We've torpedoed a ship. Our allies are in the water. Come help me get them out. And they took on several hundred. I want to say 150 to 200 people inside the sub, on top of the sub, staying on the surface. The other subs started doing the same, and they start convoying. They get as many as they can. They tie off life rafts to the back of the sub, and they're towing life rafts back toward shore, toward the nearest shore. And they're radioing in the clear, describing their little task force here, what they're doing, rescue force. They're headed toward shore. They're signaling flag of truce. They all have white flags on. They've taken bed sheets and they've painted a red cross on a white background and draped it across the sub. Probably, I'm assuming, across the guy wires that you see there. And they're sailing in, and a U.S. bomber finds them and circles, and not really sure what to do, but he sees the red cross, he sees the white flag, and he hears the radio message, and he returns to base. But the base he's flying out of is a top secret base that the Americans have set up on this island to fight U-boats. He reports into his commander, and his commander says, get back in your bird, go out there and sink them. They can't know that we're here. Wow. And so he does, and he starts dropping bombs, and the U-boats, in order to save their vessels, they had to submerge, and they even actually, from one source I was reading earlier this week, they submerged slowly enough to where the suction of the boat going down wouldn't pull them under. They would have a fighting chance of staying afloat. And a lot of those folks died, when the bomb blast hit and everything around them. But the Laconia incident resulted in Donuts issuing a proclamation: no U-boats will stop and pick up survivors forthwith. Do not surface to help them. Do not, pick them up to interrogate them. Leave them alone. The safety of your boat is paramount. And when Nuremberg happened after the war, this was what they were trying to hit Dönitz with, to call for his execution, for a war crime. And Nimitz was called to the stand along with one of the British Admiralty by Dönitz's lawyer. And they testified that we did the same thing. We did not have the subs surface and try to help people in the water. That just doesn't make sense in a time of war. So their testimony actually saved Dönitz's life. He was sentenced for other things, ended up serving 2 years. But yeah, this is what's going on with U-507 after the Gulf. So you'll see a marked difference between the behavior of the U-boats in the Gulf versus what's going on outside the Gulf in the next year in 1943. Anything you can add to that for the U.S. submarines behaviors?
No, I think you hit pretty much right on the head.
Okay.
That's got to be a hell of a situation for that pilot to be in.
Yeah.
You're being ordered to go back and sink those boats, and there's civilians on them. I can't imagine what was going through that pilot's head at that time.
I will say, in researching this, and I'm not trying to get political, so nobody jump at me, but the Laconia incident was, when I was doing research, the Laconia incident was written up recently as a reference for the Venezuela boats as well. So people were calling back to that incident going, hey, what's the difference here? So,
gotcha.
It affected the Geneva Convention rules of war after World War II.
Sure.
So the boats are here. The wolves are here. And about 25 U-boats entered the Gulf during that time period from May of 42 to December of 43. And they sank approximately 56 Allied vessels and damaged about 19 more. This picture is one of those, and was it's the Pennsylvania Sun, I want to say, off of Florida's southeastern coast.
I think you're right. That name rings a bell.
Yeah. The bulk of the activity occurs May, June, July 42. It was Greg, what's the German term? The happy time?
Yeah, happy time, or shooting season, something like that.
Something like
but
that.
Second happy time was the I think is the accepted German translation.
Yeah. So yeah, targets aplenty. Again, still backlit. The Gulf Coast is, not as bright as the East Coast, but there's still lights. The Germans could talk about seeing car lights going down a highway along the coast. So lots of sinkings right off the coast of Louisiana. The Germans lost one single U-boat, which you covered 2 weeks ago, the 166.
Yes, U-166.
And I did not get to see that stream. Did you talk about the Widgeon versus the patrol boat?
I think if memory serves, I just stuck to the incident with the Robert E. Lee, the U-166, and the PC-556.
So CJ was caught up in the middle of a mystery because initially the commander of the patrol boat did not. The Navy said you didn't sink it, and they actually sent him back to school to go through training all over again. Kind of insulting. But
I don't think I covered that, but yeah, I remember this.
Yeah, he thought that he was pretty certain he had sunk it, but they didn't believe him. So the history book said U-166 got away. And then 3 days later, a few 50, 60 miles away, a Coast Guard Widgeon, which you'll see a picture of one coming up soon, aircraft sees a boat on the surface and dives on it, drops depth charges, and it goes under, and they circle and come about, and they see an oil slick and debris coming up, and they're like, we got him. And since 166 had been in the area after the war, when they look, 166 never reported back, then they're like, oh, the Widgeon, the Coast Guard crew, sank the 166. And so they got credit for it. Years later, CJ comes across that Widgeon sitting in an airfield somewhere, kind of rusting away. They're getting ready just to cut it up and scrap it. And he got the National Museum of Naval Aviation at Pensacola to grab it and restore it. And it's hanging at Pensacola in the museum right now.
And I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've been there.
They did a good job. It's beautiful. But come 2001, Shell, I think it was laying a pipeline and discovered the wreck of the 166. And it's not where the Widgeon dropped those depth charges. It's where the Robert E. Lee was. And they found them side by side.
They're a mile apart.
Yeah. How far?
A mile.
A mile. Yeah. So yeah, CJ got called in on that and verified, okay, this is a German U-boat. Yeah. That's the Robert E. Lee. Yeah. And then the question became, well, who did the Coast Guard depth charge? And come to find out, it was another U-boat, and it did the whole oil slick thing to trick them, which it worked. And they made it back to France and were in sight of land, working their way in toward their base, and they ran into their own minefield and sank. And sucks. A handful of their crew survived, but the boat and the majority of the crew went down after going all that way and dodging a depth charging and coming all the way back. So sucked for them. But that solved the mystery of the Widgeon. So the Widgeon effectively has had that honor stripped away from it because they didn't actually sink anything.
And the commander of the PC-556 was posthumously awarded, if I remember correctly.
Yes, and from what I understand, it took a huge major effort the Navy doesn't like to ever say that it was wrong. And it took a huge effort to get his record cleared and honored, just like the incident with the Indianapolis's Commander McVeigh. So, but CJ was involved with that, and they actually got that corrected posthumously. He never lived to get the vindication.
I believe his son was given the award, if I remember correctly.
I think you're right. So yeah, the final this is all the 166 and the other U-boat. I can't remember the number off the top of my head. There's so many of them, but that all happens July 30th and August 1st, and then it quiets down quite a bit. And there's still U-boats coming to the Gulf, but there's stuff coming into play now in the Atlantic. That and now in early 43 that that is making the Gulf not as happy hunting ground as it was. You're beginning to get the hunter-killer groups in the Atlantic with the Jeep carriers and the DEs. So the milk cows are under threat, and if the milk cows are under threat, then the U-boats are having a harder time getting to the Gulf. So the final attack in the Gulf occurs in December of 43. But for that short amount of time, they achieved what Dönitz wanted, which was, we'll talk about in a second on the next slide, which is basically keep them guessing and pin down their assets, spread their assets out and pin them down. Yes, one of the Vichy ports was in Brest, which is where this last U-boat ran into the minefield. So tie down these resources. Folks, if you've never seen the movie 1941, it's a comedy by Steven Spielberg. Watch it, not only because our P-40 replica is in it, with John Belushi sitting in it and acting like he's chasing Japanese fighters, but it covers the Great Los Angeles Air Raid, which was very much like Orson Welles' War of the Worlds radio play. Stuff happened in Los Angeles, and people panicked and thought that the Japanese were invading and bombing them and everything. And they were firing artillery up in the air. It was crazy, but this is a comedic take on that event. It was a very serious event, but it gives you an idea of what it was like down here, because there's German subs in the Gulf shooting up oil tankers. There's Japanese carriers that hit Hawaii, and there's still the rumors of air raids on Los Angeles. And so the thought going on was maybe there could be air attacks coming from South America, because the Germans are very much interested in South America and setting up bases down there. If they can get down there, then they can get up here. So as a result, the Army Air Corps and the Aircraft Warning System created observation posts all along the Gulf Coast. And this picture is of one that's still standing, barely, in Florida. And this is what you would have seen all along South Louisiana. Civilians, just like the Civil Air Patrol, are sitting in them, and they're watching. They've got the recognition cards for the German and Italian and Japanese, of all things, aircraft. And they're sitting in places like Mowata and Gibson and Large, Lydia, Berg, Des Allemands, and more, all through South Louisiana.
It's weird. It's almost surreal for me seeing some of these names. I've been to all these places more times than I can count.
I know, right? I know somebody from Mowata, and Mowata is about as big as my thumbnail, but they had an observation post there. And go ahead.
Just going to say Gibson, Dularge, Berg, that's all in Terrebonne Parish, just south of Houma, where Kidd is at, of course.
Yeah.
Des Allemands is about a 20-minute drive from there. Well, Des Allemands is pretty much between Houma and New Orleans.
Right. So, yeah, I drive through it every time I come down to y'all.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing that CJ noted in his book, because he interviewed a lot of the people that worked in some of these stations, and in one of the other things that's coming up on another slide, he noted that a lot of the people recruited for this were teenagers who were too young to join the military. So this was something that they could do to serve their country without, you're not old enough yet to go in the military, but you can sit here and watch for aircraft. And a lot of older guys that were above service age, they were too old, but they could go and climb up in these towers and sit there and just occupy space and make sure that nothing got past them. So another Molly. Sorry. So the Coast Guard and the Navy in July 42, and remember the bulk of the activity is May, June, July. They finally take over the sub patrols from the Army Air Corps and the National Guard. Coast Guard Station Biloxi, Air Station Biloxi, takes and sends a detachment of Widgeons, and that's that little fat-bellied plane on the top. And they're flying out of the airport at Homa. And it's still a civilian airport at this point. And they're doing patrols. And then the Navy takes and sends a seaplane tender, the Christiana, which used to be somebody's yacht. And until I found this picture, I was thinking seaplane tender, big, heavy ship, booms to pick the planes up, workshops on board. Dude, the plane is probably almost as big as the boat looks like. But she actually goes back to pre-World War One, and understand correctly, a wooden hull for the most part. So they park Christiana in Barataria Bay, and they send down a detachment of Kingfisher aircraft to fly out of Barataria Bay, which is interesting. Hey, take a mobile platform and move it around as you need to cover some of these patrol routes. Incidentally, shameless promotion. Go to our Facebook, not Facebook. Go to our YouTube channel, and there's a video, 2-part video of us talking to the guys at USS Alabama about the catapult on their stern and about their Kingfisher. If you've never seen a Kingfisher, you can see one at the Bama.
I've seen
and Texas keeps trying to steal it. Hunter Michern desperately wants their Kingfisher, but they're going to have to get past Matt McClooney at Bama to get it.
Yeah, and I don't see that happening. Matt's
a big boy. He'll take Hunter out in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
So,
is this Homa-Nast?
Big puzzle piece.
This is Homa-Nast, isn't it?
This is Homa Naval Air Station. They established 3 lighter-than-air squadrons, one in Florida, one here in Louisiana at Homa, and one in Texas. And when I first heard about this, I was like, what? You're fighting submarines with blimps? All they got to do is turn their machine gun up and shoot the blimp. It's not that
right.
Not that
well,
hard.
Didn't that happen in the Atlantic?
I believe it did for one of them, yeah. But the cool thing is the blimp can hover probably higher than the U-boat can easily accurately shoot.
Right.
But ZP-22 was the squadron that was housed here at Homa, the Bayou Bombers. And they were 6 K-class blimps housed in one hangar. And you can see that's a standard hangar on the bottom. That is not the one at Homa. But the picture up top is a blimp and the hangar that was at Homa. And we have some footage that we were working on with Ken Stano of History X when he and Shane came down to visit us in the shipyard. I was able to secure permission to go onto the grounds. The support columns, if you look at the bottom edge of the curve of the hangar, you see some white vertical columns. Kind of looks like a little ladder laying on its side. Those columns are still there, and they're huge. Yeah. The true scale. In fact, you can see the inside where the curved part of the hangar comes down. That white wall, that's where these huge concrete columns are. And I would say they're probably 30, 40 feet up in the air before you actually get to the curved part. So this is a major undertaking, and it's in Homa, which y'all don't have the sturdiest soil down there, James. You have to really drive pilings and everything to make sure that stuff doesn't sink. In fact, this base, this hangar had different doors. It had basically a cap on each end that instead of like the others had sliding barn doors that just rolled off to the side. This had the caps and the caps would then roll outward away and around to the sides of the hangar on rails, like a railroad train. And you can still see those rails in the concrete along with the base of the hangar.
This Man's Navy is a wartime movie, semi-comedy about ASW blimps. The movie does show a shootout, blimp versus U-boat.
Yeah. Apparently, the idea behind the blimp was the blimp doesn't expend a lot of fuel. It can just sit up there and float and basically keep the U-boat underwater for longer periods of time until the ships get away, and then it can go about its way. If it doesn't have another sighting of the sub, it can move on, which makes sense. Keep them down,
Sure.
make them burn their battery, so their battery life. So this is the last major component, but by the time this gets put together in May of '43, the U-boats are mostly gone. So the threat is gone, and Dernitz's plan was you go where they're not, and then they've got to take stuff and move it from one theater to another, and just keep them guessing and keep those assets tied up elsewhere where you're not. And they did a good job.
Tim, Akron, Ohio still has a big hangar like this. It's huge. Now, Akron is relatively close to Cleveland, where the KIDD is. Road trip?
After the ship gets home and my little doggy doesn't need shots anymore. It may be a while.
So we're moving on to the next one, and we're going to get into some of these myths and legends about.
Right. Now, one that I didn't get into that came about that the Laconia incident kind of influenced, machine gunning survivors of shipwrecks. You see it in movies all the time. Apparently, it was in U-571, and a lot of people think that was very commonplace. And there's only one instance that the Nuremberg Tribunal could find where a German U-boat captain, actually machine gunned people in the water. And as a result, he and his other two officers that did the shooting were all executed at Nuremberg. No other U-boats, there's no evidence that the Germans did something like that. And so that's a myth that tends to persist, but no evidence that has been brought forth that shows that was the case.
Well, it was in movies, so it has to be real.
Okay, remember that quote, because we're going to use that quote again in just a little bit. For myth number 2. But for myth and legends number 1, traitorous U.S. citizens supplied the U-boats with food and water and intelligence. And I've never seen this until today. I stumbled across this picture while I was looking. And this is a children's book. And this guy is given a recollection. He's 5 years old when the war started. He talks about beach patrol on horseback and everything, like what we were talking about earlier. He said at one point he remembers the blimps, and then at one point he and mom and dad were walking along at night, and all of a sudden a spotlight from out on the water hits them, and dad's like, "It's a sub, get down." And they waited, and the light went away, and off they went. The thing that was really interesting to me is over on page 2, and he talks about where the two Japanese two-man subs. That's got to be the mini subs, like Parks was.
The midget subs at Pearl Harbor, for example.
Surfacing among the strip boats to recharge their batteries. Now, how in the world would a Japanese mini sub get in the Gulf of Mexico without going all the way around the world? It just makes no sense, right? Apparently the subs didn't bother the smaller boats. There's stories of some shrimpers and oyster boats trading stuff for gold with the subs. Submarines didn't carry gold, except for that one, that the treasure sub that they have no proof of.
There technically is an American boat that carried gold out of Corregidor when we were evacuating Corregidor.
But not on a regular basis.
No, not on a regular basis, but it did happen.
Yeah, it did happen. So there's ingredients, there's little nuggets here and there that just get kind of amassed, and all of a sudden you've got a book for children talking about, German subs, trading shrimp and oysters, foodstuffs for shrimp and oyster boats for gold. And this one, CJ even referenced this one. When some enemy subs were sunk by our forces, Evangeline-made bread wrappers would float to the surface. I guarantee you that's just some shrimper that dumped his garbage out at sea. Trading of supplies must have been profitable, because it said that some people with boats west of New Orleans made a pile of money. They're talking about the Houma people there, Terrebonne people. I wouldn't doubt that some of those big blonde fellows didn't come ashore and walk the streets of Duloc, Houma, and Abbeville with some of those Cajuns saying, "May, boys, those guys must be Americans from the north. They don't look like Cajuns." No. So,
oh my gosh.
This is
my head's going to start hurting on this.
Right? So, fun fact, actual fact, historical fact. CJ found that there was, I'm going to say was, because we have so few World War II vets left, there was a U-boat Veterans Reunion Association. Just like there's a USS KIDD Reunion Association, there's probably a Bakuna Reunion Association. All of these military ships had reunion associations as the years went by. CJ was very interested in the war in the Gulf, and only 999. Only if you have me giving the accent. I'm using those accents to cover up my redneck accent. CJ goes to Germany and signs up, and he writes ahead and says, "Can I sign up for this?" And they're like, "Sure." And so he signs up and he goes. He pays his registration fee and everything, and he comes in. And there's all these U-boat veterans, all these sailors, and he starts milling around and talking with them. And ultimately, the question, from what he had told me on one of our visits, that he kept getting was, "Why are you here? Why is an American wanting to come to our German sailors' reunion?" And he told them he was interested in the war in the Gulf. He was just really fascinated with it. He wanted to learn about it from people who were there, even if they were from the other side. He wanted their side of the story to compare with what was being said back home, or what wasn't being said back home. And as a result of his first visit, by the end of it, he really saw the value in it. And he asked him, he said, "How can I become a member of the association? Do you have an auxiliary or a friends of association?" And they're like, "Nobody's ever asked this. Well, we have, stay here. We're going to go talk." And they went away, and they came back, and they're like, here's the membership fee, and you're a full member if you want." And so he became a member of the German Kriegsmarine U-boat Association for many years. And in 78, he got to go, and Donitz was there, and he talked to the admiral, and he said, "Admiral, is there any truth to the rumors that float around South Louisiana that German sailors came ashore from the U-boats and got resupplied by sympathetic people in South Louisiana?" And said Donitz just went, "No, none."
Right. Absolutely not.
And he talked to some of the others, and they all separately, because CJ was really good about that. He didn't ask a group, he asked individuals. and just made his way through the group asking questions just to have a, you talk to me and Greg, we'll remember the same event, even though I might have been out of the room, because I've heard the retelling of it.
Right.
So he was trying to avoid that scenario. And he said, Donuts just put it very bluntly, why would we surface and put our ships at risk and our crew members at risk going ashore in enemy territory with people that we don't know whether they're hostile or friendly? So that shoots that whole resupply thing out of the water, because 50 years later, why would they even lie about it? War's over. They can't. You're going to arrest somebody because they went and got Evangeline made bread from somebody on shore? No. So
you've essentially torpedoed this myth.
Yes, and there's a slide later about how did this stuff get started. So we'll go to the next slide. And that's the one right here. There was a 2002 movie made by somebody, I don't forget his name, down in your area, called The Scoundrel's Wife, and all of the tropes land in this movie. And in spite of a testimonial by the Chicago Tribune of how great the movie was, very few people seem to know about this, except people in South
I've never heard of this.
And you notice I've got two covers because I ordered one because I wanted to see it, and they don't even sell it now by its original name, The Scoundrel's Wife. They sell it as Homefront. They had to change the name. So I don't have high hopes that it's going to be a good movie. But what's interesting is that I've had people tell me that no, there are people that supplied the Germans with food and with maps and everything. They showed it in that movie, and they used this movie as proof. So, your earlier statement that, well, they made a movie about it, it must be true.
It's got to be true.
It's got to be true. Now, CJ did talk to a lot of fishermen and shrimpers. He had part of his career was involved with the oil fields, and he talked to a lot of guys that worked in the oil fields at that time. And they reported spotting U-boats off the coast on occasion, but they just kept their heads down and minded their business. They didn't jump on the radio because, they could probably pick up the radio broadcast if they're monitoring, and they didn't want to have their ship sunk out from under them. So they waited until they got ashore. The U-boat's long gone by that point, but they got ashore, and then they picked up the telephone and called and said, hey, we just sighted a U-boat. We were off this location. And then the craziest one I've heard is the name of the region, German coast. The German coast on the west bank of the Mississippi, north of New Orleans, has also been cited as support for Germans coming ashore and staying. And I'm sorry, but the German coast started getting settled in 1719. I don't think those people would be friendly to Germany anymore by that point. They probably had never been to Germany by this point. So, but it makes a good joke for whenever Kidd was going down river and we talked about, we hope she doesn't shell the German coast on the way down. That would be a mistake.
Yeah, if you did say that joke in any video or anything, for me, because I've never heard of this movie before.
Des Allemands literally translates to the Germans.
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah. So that town is literally named the Germans.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. Myth number 2. And this is the one that just, as Peter says in Family Guy, this one just grinds my gears.
This is the one.
This is the one where you're going to be weighing in heavily.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the one. This was the genesis of the idea for this live stream.
We saved the best for last. How many people we got? Did they all stick with us?
We've got 29 currently.
29? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for sticking with us through all this, folks.
Absolutely.
U-boats sailed up the Mississippi River as far north as Baton Rouge and sat waiting for tankers to come out of the Standard Oil, now ExxonMobil refinery. Well, the Mississippi River is not that wide, so they could just torpedo them straight from the river to the dock, and there's nothing that they've got to wait for them to come out of. But doesn't actually happen. The Corps of Engineers in World War II at the mouth of the river maintained a depth over the bar of 32 feet. From paying attention to our situation here in Baton Rouge, we need 32 feet to get the kid out of the cradle. Not the same thing though, because that's further south. That's dealing with the sandbars and everything down there. A Type 9C U-boat, which they had Type 9Cs and Type 7s in the Gulf. Most of them were Type 9Cs. 166 was a Type 9C. They were roughly from keel to the top of the conning tower, 37 feet. So right there, if she's resting on the bottom at the mouth of the river, she's got 5 feet sticking above the water. So there's no getting up the river without being seen. And when you add in the periscope, you get up to about 45 to 47 feet. And I'm a little iffy on that because I don't know the height of the periscopes. I'd love to get somebody from the Chicago Science and Industry Museum with U505 on here with us sometime and revisit this. But we're in the ballpark right there. So a U-boat scraping the bottom coming upriver would be highly visible. There's no submerging and coming upriver.
And you essentially answered a question I was going to ask with that.
Now, the river bottom changes, the depths, so when you get some places, it's going to be deeper than 32 feet. You're going to have some places that's shallower than 32 feet. So it's not uniform all the way up. But even if it is deep enough for her to dive, she's going to have to pop up again sooner or later.
I'm still going to ask this question, though. Did we have any of our subs going up and down river during the war?
Yes, and that'll be coming up in just a little bit.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is because I was wondering if the people that say they saw U-boats, could they have been mistaking our subs for U-boats?
You give them spoilers, James.
Oh, okay.
Let's
move on to the next one.
But you're using logic, and I like it. So, average surface speed of the river's current, May to August. In Baton Rouge, 2.3 to 3.2 knots. New Orleans, an average of 2.6 knots. Head of passes, 1.7 to 2.6 knots. Now, that's for that time period. You come in earlier than May, and it's going to be faster, and the water's normally going to be higher. So if they were coming in the spring, they might have been able to submerge, maybe, if it's over flood stage. But it's going to be faster. And that's where the current speed comes in, because the top speed of a Type 9C was 7.3 knots submerged. So right there, you're getting close to cutting her speed at the very least down to by a third, if not closer to, with the upper speeds, to a half. So she's burning a lot of battery power submerged coming up. If you think that she's going to be hiding underwater.
I was wondering about that too. We know the speeds of the river current. How could a U-boat or even one of our subs maybe on battery power trying to fight that going upriver? Like you say, they got to be burning the hell out of their batteries.
Right. You're losing batteries, the length of battery strength and how long you can be on the battery because you're fighting the current.
Yeah. If battery consumption for the Type 9C batteries is anything like the fleet boat batteries, they don't be able to maintain that 7.3 knots for about 30 minutes in max anyway.
There you go.
Wow.
There you go. So the more you're fighting, the faster the battery goes. Maximum range for a Type 9C, submerged, running on batteries, 63 nautical miles. And this is what kills me whenever I'm talking to somebody about this. The distance from the river's mouth to New Orleans is 96 nautical miles. Total distance to Baton Rouge, 200 nautical miles, because the river is snaking back and forth. Can you imagine going up the river, even if they could submerge, going up the river 200 miles? on battery. You'd be surfacing, recharging. It's like driving a Tesla. Submerge, drive, submerge, surface, charge. It's horrible. So it makes no strategic sense whatsoever.
Well,
Let's see how much more crazy it gets.
Well, just based on what you and Greg alone are saying, it's physically impossible, at least on battery power.
During wartime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Here's the craziness. Here's all the military installations between Hedda Passes and Baton Rouge in World War II. You've got Burwood right at the mouth of the river. You've got Callender Field, which nowadays is Joint Service Base New Orleans, better known as Belle Chase, the location that it's at. You've got Naval Station Algiers. That was opened right there in the turn of the river across from downtown New Orleans. Shushan Airport was being used by the military. Naval Air Station New Orleans. Harding Field in Baton Rouge at the top end of this gauntlet that these hypothetical U-boats were running. And then within just a short range, flying range, they wouldn't be right on top of them, but Hammond Airfield to the east and Homa Airport, and later Naval Air Station Homa from the southwest. So if you can't be submerged and you get silhouetted and spotted on the surface, somebody hears your diesels running, if you're crazy enough to run a submarine up 200 miles to Baton Rouge, you're going to get spotted. And the wrath of God is going to be coming down on you. There's just no way. There's no way. And then, Greg,
I do want to point out too. I'm actually kind of surprised no one has asked this yet. The Type 9Cs weren't retrofitted with snorkels until 43 and 44, and by that point they were out of the Gulf.
Yeah. So, yeah, it just gets crazier. I'm going to let you talked about this in the office when we were talking about this. I'll let you take this point here.
Before you do, real quick, Matt has a question I'd like for Greg to answer.
Not that I know of.
The batteries on the subs, how did they recharge them?
Oh, it's the diesel generators. So when you're on the surface, you're running your diesel engines. They're turning basically electric generators. So when you're on the surface, it's not really diesel direct drive; it's diesel electric drive. So the diesels are going and turning electric generators, and then those generators are either sending power to the batteries for charging or to electric motors, which is what actually turns the propellers. So that's how you recharge your batteries.
So like a car's alternator.
You're kind of like a modern Prius, right?
Okay.
Your Prius just has torpedo tubes.
So I'm sorry. Continue. You were gonna let Greg tackle the next one.
Yeah. He's better at physics than I am.
That's a bold claim. But yeah, if we're talking about Mississippi being freshwater, we were talking about this in the context of paint, but not necessarily submarines. But yeah, I mean, freshwater and saltwater do have different densities. Saltwater is much more dense than freshwater is because you've got the salt in it, right? And so that is going to affect your ability to dive, particularly how fast you can dive. It's going to change the math. How much water do you have to take onto the submarine in order to dive? And, you know, these boats, I'm sure these captains were smart enough to be able to figure that out, but were you going to really risk that?
Sure.
Tim, this is actually, I was talking with a guest the other day and I didn't know the answer. Where is the salt line at in the Mississippi, like between the Mississippi and the Gulf? How far up is the salt line?
It varies according to what's going on in the year. There's some years to where it advances fairly close to New Orleans. And some years, you know, when the river is fairly high, like what we need it to be, it doesn't get as close to New Orleans as you know other years. So just like what you experienced in Philadelphia, where sometimes New Jersey and I'm not sure about the placement. Y'all look like you're right across from each other. Olympia and Bacuna and New Jersey,
yeah,
would sometimes get a little brackish, but then and then the fresh water would push it on away?
Very, very rarely. I don't think we ever got totally brackish. The highest that I can remember the salt line coming up to Delaware was the not the Walt Whitman. It's the bridge before that. I think it's the Commodore Barry Bridge. So in my time there, I don't ever remember being able to see the salt line.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. I have heard, and you know, it's politicians, so you know, I don't know how much politicians and corporations. I don't know how much truth there was of New Orleans is going to, you know, get salt water in their systems because they get their water from the river. Oh my God, we got to truck in water, that sort of thing. So I don't know if it ever has actually gotten to New Orleans or not. Chat, any of you from New Orleans, have you gotten salt water into the river in Metro New Orleans before? Shout out. We'll be watching. I can say from CJ's interviews for this last little tidbit at the bottom of the page, he talked with some of the U-boat veterans, and he got with other historians who gave him copies of their interviews with U-boat veterans. The Germans did not like sitting close to the mouth of the river. They tried to maintain a certain distance away and catch anything that's going toward the mouth of the river. The SS Virginia was actually torpedoed. A gasoline tanker just went up like a Roman candle. But the first torpedo missed because they hadn't accounted for the fresh water. And she was literally sitting at the jetties, the Eads jetties, at the mouth of the river, waiting for a pilot to come on board. And CJ talked to the pilot, and he said he was stepping from his boat onto the Jacob's ladder to climb up the side of the tanker, and he sees a torpedo shoot underneath his boat and go under the ship. And he said he immediately dropped back down into the boat, and then all of a sudden, as they're pulling away and radio and, you know, torpedo, then here comes a second torpedo, and it hits it, and kaboom.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, yeah, they did not like fresh water. So last fact, 32 years after the fact, German U-boat veterans laughed at the notion that they would be stupid enough to take their boats upriver. The rewards did not come close to equaling the risks, especially when it was so easy and so plentiful hunting right off the coast for those first 3 months. So if you are one of those people who grandpa told you, or Uncle Joe told you, or mom or dad told you, you likely probably got some misinformation, or they got some misinformation. But if U-boats made it to Baton Rouge up the Mississippi River, I will eat the USS Kidd. I will literally carve her up and eat her. That's how good I feel about it. I will eat every rivet that you guys haven't bought yet.
I'll bring you mine.
It's a lot of rivets.
That's a lot of rivets. I won't eat them all in one sitting. I'll have to pass them and then eat more. But and then I'll sell those. So you can say you've had rivets that have been in the USS Kidd and Tim NesSmith for whatever.
There you go.
That'll probably reduce their value though.
Eat the rivets on the ship before you eat the ship.
And let's see, we got one more, I think.
Two more.
All right.
Yep.
So origins of the myth. CJ covered this. He said there's plenty of debris in the river. It's been mistaken for periscopes, and I can tell you, please don't eat the artifact. Thank you, Lunar. I appreciate your backing me up on that. Lunar, I can always depend on. He's got my back. But yeah, my time on the Kidd, and Greg, I'm sure you've had folks do the same thing in the Delaware River. Is that a shark fin? Is that a whale out there? No, that's not a whale. That's a log. You know, that sort of stuff. I actually had one of my tour guides. I will not name her because family may be watching. I don't want to embarrass her, but somebody told her there was a whale in the river, and she ran out to the levee and saw this big log floating down past the kid. They called her from the quarterdeck. They're like, "Hey, come out. There's a whale. There's a whale." And she comes running, and she comes back, and she's like, "Tim, there's a whale in the river." I'm like, "There's not a whale in the river." She's like, "Yeah, come over to the window." And we look out, and I'm like, "Sweetheart, that's a log." "No, it's a whale." I'm like, "Have you seen any air going up? Have you seen it kind of curving?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "Then if it's a whale, it's a dead whale." Aw. So yeah, lots of debris comes down the river. Nathan saw during COVID, when I was locked down in the house here because my wife had COVID. Nathan saw during the high point of the river in April, flood season, he saw like a Honda Civic or something floating, butt end up, trunk end up, floating down the river, half submerged. So there's lots of stuff in that river that can be mistaken for other things.
Sure.
And James, you logicked it out. Point number 2. Yes, we had submarines coming downriver from the shipyards in Manitowoc. And Greg, were there any other interior shipyards besides Manitowoc for submarines?
No, it was
just them.
Electric Boat on the East Coast. It was Portsmouth Naval Shipyard on the East Coast, Manitowoc, and then on the West Coast you had Mare Island.
Okay. So Manitowoc was sending all their stuff because St. Lawrence Seaway didn't exist at this point. They're sending all their stuff into the Chicago River, I want to say, or one of the canals or rivers from the Great Lakes. That there's a canal that connects it to the upper Mississippi and then on downward. And I always wondered about how they got them through some of those canals. And apparently they put them in a dry dock, and they moved them from point A to point B until they could get in the river and actually come down. So, and then U.S. submarines were used post-war. So they're still World War II boats, but it's post-war. They're used as reserve vessels for training out of New Orleans. There was at least 2 of them. One of them is Batfish, which you can see in the picture there. When she retired as a reserve vessel, they brought her straight from New Orleans to Oklahoma.
German U-boat captains known to weld Hondas to conning towers as camouflage.
Was Honda building cars at that point, Weasel? Come on. Really?
All right. They certainly weren't building them in the United States.
No. Besides, why would Germans use Japanese cars? They've got that fine German engineering.
But, well, they were allies, though.
They were. So another possibility, and of course, we're getting farther and farther away from the war at this point, but this picture right here comes from Port Visit in 1961 for Mardi Gras. Remember when ships would come to Mardi Gras before 9/11? They had diesel boats during the Cold War coming up. This is Sea Poacher, Grenadier, Threadfin, and the person taking the boat taking the photo is Tirante. Is that how you say it, Greg?
That's how I would. That's my best guess. Tirante or Tirante.
Now there was one guy. There was one guy on our Facebook page that made a comment that his grandpa told him that he worked at Exxon and he saw a U-boat surface in the river right off of Exxon. And I think we've kind of proven that probably was not likely. Either he saw something in the river that looked like a submarine, or maybe the telephone game of, this person got one detail wrong and then the next person got another detail wrong and the whole story changes. There was a port visit by the Quillback. And I don't know if she would, with that number, would she have been a Gato class? Greg?
Quillback? No, she'd been a Tench.
A Tench? Okay.
Yeah, Tench, because Torsk is 423, so she would have been a Tench class.
Okay. So Quillback came to Baton Rouge for a port visit in 1973, and this refinery, the Humble Oil Refinery, the docks for it is right behind the Canadian National Railroad yard north of where the Kidd is. And that's the exact area where the guy that's talking about, his grandpa seeing a U-boat surface, that's right where that was at. So is it possible that the story just got corrupted over the years and grandpa was actually talking about the Quillback? Could be. I'm not calling grandpa a liar. I'm just thinking something got twisted somewhere there, which is easy to do. And that's part of the reason CJ was great with oral history, is because he'd take what was told to him and passed down through families and everything, and then he'd go out and he'd find the stuff to either verify it or shut it down. And that's what we all have to do with oral histories. Yeah, I've got some oral histories with the Kidd that's just like, oh no.
We'd get visitors on Bakuna all the time being like, the older, either they were older or like they were talking about their grandfather, and they'd be like, I can remember visiting this submarine back in like 72. She was over, just a little bit further north at the time. And I'm like, Bakuna was decommissioned in 69 and didn't become a museum until 76. So there's no way you visited this boat. And I did some research, and Temple University, their photo archives, has a port visit from USS Tang, the second one. Okay. And she's moored exactly where they're saying that she was moored. And so it's like, okay, you probably went on this public visit day for USS Tang too, and not actually Bakuna. But they had
there all that time.
Yeah, she wasn't there all that time. But if you look at Tang 2, that class of submarine was the first class of diesel boat built post-war. And so they have a lot of the same features that the Guppy boats did. And so you can see how it's very easy to get the two mixed up.
Right.
I did not know there was a Tang too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we have. You'll probably hear this sooner or later, Greg. The longer you stay, we have people come up all the time and wonder where you got rid of your submarine. It's like, we've never had a submarine. We've only had the Kidd. And they're like, no, I came to see the Kidd and I toured the submarine. It had to be the Baton Rouge, and they pointed that big banner in the lobby, and it's like, no, we did not have a nuke boat here. No. There's never been a nuke boat other than Nautilus as a museum in the U.S. And they swear to it. I toured it. We went down, and it was a World War II boat. No, we didn't have it. Baton Rouge is not a World War II boat. Well, it was a World War II boat. Do you think that maybe you're remembering the drum in Mobile? There's a submarine at Mobile. Yeah, right behind the battleship. Oh my God. It was, that's where we were. Okay. Yeah. So same source.
And also possibly the Cavala.
Possibly the Cavala. But the minute we say Mobile and Alabama, they're like, oh yeah. No. I actually have not had Cavala pop up very much, although it would make more sense because Stewart is closer in size to Kidd than Alabama.
Absolutely.
So,
but everything's a battleship these days.
It's true. Very true.
Yes. Just like every single four-funnel ocean liner ever built is Titanic.
Yes. And everything with sails is a pirate ship.
Yes.
I got that a lot when I was on Constellation.
So I think that is the end of our myth busting. Yeah. And so what I'd like to hear from Chad is, what myths have you, or what stories have you heard that took place in the Gulf, elsewhere, that you would like to know more about? See if it's real, see if it's not real.
Let's see if we get any hits on that. And in the meantime, while we're waiting on some responses, Tim, how can folks go to learn more about the USS KIDD Veterans Museum?
www.usskid.com. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube.
305 South River Road.
305 South River Road. And buy a ticket, and a rivet, and a Kobe.
And a Kobe Kidd kit.
Yeah.
Yes.
And one of the
Patreon.
resin and all the resin models that we have now.
Oh yeah, we've got those resin models as well. I'm missing one. X, aka
Patreon.
Twitter.
Patreon.
TikTok.
Patreon. Join our Patreon. Yeah. You can hear Elijah. Elijah does a good job with the book club. I have to say, he really does. I give him a hard time about it, but he really shines with the book club. We actually do not.
He puts up with Tim and I in chat.
Huh?
He puts up with Tim and I in chat.
Yeah, if you want to laugh, watch me, and because our Patreon is still, we've got some loyal followers, but the book club doesn't pull a lot of people in. We got John Epp in there one time, and then he monitored but didn't participate in the chat after that. And then I was just trolling Elijah for many months until Greg came along, and now I have somebody that trolls me while I'm trolling Elijah, or turns around and trolls Elijah, and then I troll Greg. So it's a lot of fun.
Nice.
Oh, I know what it was. TikTok. We have a TikTok.
TikTok, yes.
Yeah, and I don't understand it, so Gabby B and Paisley handle all of that. Greg, do you understand TikTok?
I understand that it's like Instagram Reels for the youth. That's about all I got.
For the youth.
Yes, I'm told Instagram Reels is like a millennial and Gen X thing nowadays, and then TikTok is for the youth.
Yeah, you just made yourself old officially.
I've been old. It's fine.
You got a question, my friend?
Oh yeah, let me bring that up for you.
Let's see, USS Constellation had the most successful interdiction of the slave trade off West Africa of U.S. Squadron that was captured by slave owner raid. I guess that would depend on what your metric for successful is. She only ever captured one slaver, and that was the Cora. I don't remember off the top of my head how many slaves she freed, but that was her only like big capture. So that depends on your definition of successful.
Before we go, I normally don't do this when we stream together, but I'm going to plug something on my channel. I recently had the opportunity to interview a gentleman by the name of Mark Churnside. Mark Churnside is an author and historian of early 20th century ocean liners like the Titanic era. We are doing a 3-part series on my channel where we talk about the Olympic class ships. We've already got the Olympic discussion on my channel. We have our date set for when we're going to do our Titanic discussion, and we're going to have a Britannic one as well. So if you are interested in those vessels at all, head over to my channel and find Olympic with Mark Churnside.
Very cool. You catching all 3?
Yes, that's the plan. Well, gentlemen, is there anything else you guys want to add to this discussion before we call it an evening?
I don't think I have anything. Yeah.
Just listen to me talk.
No, it was great. I learned a whole lot more about this topic than even I was expecting. And Tim, of course, we appreciate you putting together that slide presentation. That was excellent.
I enjoyed it, and because I got the chance to basically revisit CJ's research. If you haven't been to the museum in Homa, the Homa Regional Military Museum, they have a huge collection that just spans a whole bunch of different areas. They've got a Vietnam era LCVP, and it's freshly restored. It's sitting out on the grounds for you to be able to see. Several aircraft. I think they're looking for a tank. I don't know.
Yeah.
But lots of cool stuff. An Air Force One and a presidential limo from the 40s, 50s.
There's a plane from President Eisenhower in there. Mm-hmm. And I know it starts with Civil War and works its way up to Vietnam. I know for sure it covers all those areas. I don't know if it I don't think it covers anything post-Vietnam, but I could be wrong.
Well, if you like to stop and read every single thing, you're going to be there all day. So make
Yes.
sure to plan accordingly and visit Bears down the street for lunch. And after you get done at the museum, go down the other end of the street to Spigot's and eat there. I have vastly enjoyed both of those places. What's the barbecue place, James?
Big Mike's.
Big Mike's is excellent. Magnolia Cafe on the other side of the Industrial Canal on Grand Caillou is fabulous Mexican food, authentic Mexican food. Just lots of good places to eat at, and I'm going to miss when Kid leaves. I'm going to miss going down there and getting all that great food, but I will lose weight. So plus side, it'll be a sad plus side.
And I don't think they have a website, but they do have a Facebook page, the Regional Military Museum. You see it, just make sure it's the one in Houma. It's the only one there. And
ask for Miss Linda Terrio.
There you go.
Fabulous lady. She'll probably drop everything and give you a personal tour. She loves visitors.
Yes. Well, gentlemen, we are just over 2 hours. I think that's a good stopping point.
My puppy's
so
will
too.
I think Molly is bored to death.
Probably so. All right. Regardless of which channel you are watching on, we appreciate you guys so much for coming and hanging out and listening to us talk history for 2 hours. It's much appreciated. Thank you guys so much for the support on both channels. We really do appreciate it. And that's it. See you guys next time.
See you next time.
Yes, have a great weekend.